Hey everyone, intuitive and astrologer Lisa Salvatore here to talk to you about Mercury retrograde that begins on April 1st, 2024. And no, that is not an April Fool's joke. Our first retrograde of 2024, and it's Mercury, and it technically starts on April 1st. Before we get into it, please like, share, and subscribe to make sure that you're notified of all new uploads. And also be sure to subscribe for my newsletter, linked in the description box below, so that you don't miss any of my posts. Also, private consultations are available. That link will also be in the description box below. Let's get right into it. If you've been following me for a long time, you know that I don't typically make a very big deal out of Mercury retrograde. I will give you key points of the retrograde to watch out for or to be mindful of, but I don't usually do a full-on reading or video regarding Mercury retrograde. But this one, however, I decided to do it because there's a lot going on. We're right smack in the middle of eclipse season, and we are building up to the total solar eclipse on April 8th, which takes place in Aries. This Mercury retrograde also takes place in Aries. We just had a lunar eclipse full moon on March 25th, and we're still settling into, and we are still very much under that energy. There are a lot of endings and beginnings. There are a lot of massive shifts taking place, both collectively speaking and of course for everybody individually and in different ways. But one common thread is that relationships are getting facelifts. Some are ending, some are entering a whole new trajectory. And now that we're coming upon Mercury retrograde, expect communications to go a little awry, but expect communications. Maybe even some clarification. Yes, even though Mercury's retrograde. So let's talk about the planet Mercury. Mercury is the closest planet to the sun, and it never strays far from the sun. So when Mercury stations retrograde, the planet is not necessarily actually moving backwards. That is just our vantage point from here on Earth. Spiritually speaking, energetically speaking, yes, absolutely, the properties, the archetypes of Mercury, we definitely do feel as if those are going backwards and that those are spinning us out of control. But in actuality, the planet itself is not technically moving backwards. Think about it like you're sitting on a train and the car is speeding and you have your back facing the opposite direction, and when you look out the window, it looks like the cars are actually passing you by in the opposite direction. I hope I'm making sense. That's an optical illusion. That's not really happening. The speed at which the train is moving versus the cars, it's an optical illusion. That's what it's like when the planets are retrograde. It's perspective. But that being said, the properties of Mercury absolutely go wonky while that retrograde cycle is in effect, and also a little bit before and a little bit after, because we have what we call the shadow zone. So Mercury first entered the shadow zone on March 18th. So think about anything and everything that might have been coming up for you since March 18th, and particularly around the lunar eclipse, because that is going to give you a little insight into what might be your theme for this particular Mercury retrograde. And again, that might be minimal for you. It might be a bigger deal for others. You will also want to look to the part of your birth chart that contains Aries, because that is the area where Mercury will be moonwalking through. And again, you can pull up your birth chart for free right on my website, linked in the description box below. And you can very quickly and easily see which area this will be occurring for you. And I'm also going to go into, in this video, and I am going to try to do it as quickly as possible, I'm going to do a reading for each sign. So Mercury entered shadow on March 18th. Mercury will station direct officially on April 1st. But leading up to April 1st, I need you to understand that it's like we're under a double dose of the Mercury shenanigans. Well, what does that mean? Well, Mercury is information, it's communication, it's the way that we speak, it's the way that we perceive information. It's also travel, it's technology, it's electronics, it's the media. Many different areas Mercury rules over, okay? So while retrograde, those areas may be a little spotty. You may need to revise and rework certain things, certain aspects of your reality. The unexpected might crop up for you to contend with. So just knowing that this is in effect is half the battle. Now, why am I pulling such a strong focus onto this one? Again, we're right smack in the middle of eclipse season. Definitely go and check out my total solar eclipse video. There's a lot in that one linked below in the description box. So I won't get into all of that again here, but it's very powerful, prevalent energies that we are under. This Mercury retrograde, in fact, all of the retrogrades for Mercury in 2024 are in fire signs. So fire is hot, right? Fire is emotional, fire is reactive, fire is proactive, and fire is very intuitive. But here's the thing, because Mercury's retrograde, right? we might want to take action. We might want to step forward. But when the planet is retrograde, it asks us to go inward. It asks us to reflect. It asks us to step back. And if we can honor the retrograde for what it is, which is an opportunity to slow down, to take inventory, spiritual stock and inventory of everything and anything going on inside of you and outside of you, and work within that, you're good. Now, that doesn't say it won't be frustrating. It's Mercury retrograde through a fire sign. We're going to want to move forward, but we might not be able to. And remember, Aries is a fire sign, so Aries wants to move at the speed of lightning, and this retrograde is going to be slowing that down. Communication can absolutely be very hasty, but it can also be very constructive. So it's all about being mindful, which is a key word for Mercury, being mindful of the energies, understanding when you are reacting versus responding, and taking your time with decisions. And expect things to come back around. That is typical while Mercury's retrograde. So everyone will be affected by this Mercury retrograde, okay? But those that will probably feel it the strongest are going to be Aries, and especially if you are within the range of the 15 and 27 degree of the Aries placements. Again, check your birth chart. Also Libra, also Cancer, also Capricorn. The fire signs, Sagittarius and Leo. And as always, Gemini and Virgo, because Mercury rules over Gemini and Virgo. So everything that Mercury does is specifically important for Gemini and Virgo, and Gemini and Virgo placements, such as sun, moon, or rising sign. If that gets lost on you, don't worry about it. So again, if you have strong Aries, if you have fire placements, if you're cardinal, which is Aries, Libra, Capricorn, Cancer, and then Gemini and Virgo. And oh yeah, everyone. So here are some key points of this retrograde that you're going to want to write down. Key dates, I should say. So again, Mercury will station retrograde on April 1st, around 6:15 p.m. Eastern Time, at 27 degrees and 13 minutes of Aries, to be exact. Then on April 11th, we have what we call Mercury cazimi. This is the conjunction of Mercury and the Sun. Now, this is a typical bright spot of the retrograde cycle, or a spot where you could receive very strong clarity, aha moments, epiphanies. It can come in through the dream space. Remember, Mercury is the messenger, right? And Mercury delivers information from all different levels of consciousness. It can be intuitively, through the dream space, or literally. So don't discount how the information comes through to you. Oh, and another thing is everybody's intuition is going to be heightened under these energies. Don't forget, when we're dealing with eclipses, there's this energy to the air that is much more elevated. And the more naturally intuitive you are, you're going to be really up there. And even for those that don't consider themselves that intuitive, which is crazy because we're all intuitive, but even if you don't normally feel or are tapped in as significantly or as potently, let's say, under this retrograde, you're really going to be feeling it. The insights are going to be coming in hot, like Aries, right? Fire. Keep your journal handy. Okay, but back to April 11th, that's when we have our Mercury cazimi. This is the bright spot. This is the heart, literally, of Mercury retrograde. The word cazimi means through the heart, okay, in Arabic. It's through the heart of the sun. And that is what happens when we have this moment. Mercury passes through the heart of the sun. And it is said that when any planet goes through the heart of the sun by combustion, what's happening is that that planet, the properties of that planet are becoming infused and amplified and energized by the solar energy, by the energy of the sun. And we'll be coming off that solar eclipse by a few days at that point. So it's going to be feeling pretty intense. Now, if you want to be exact with this, it takes place at 7:03 p.m. Eastern Time on April 11th. And this cazimi, this conjunction, this beautiful moment happens at 22 degrees and 32 minutes of Aries. So if your birthday falls between April 10th and April 12th, consider yourself really blessed this year, even amongst all the chaos, okay? Because this cazimi is going to be taking place on your sun. Make a wish. Be very mindful about what you're vibing on. Vibrations are really high right now. Then on April 18th, Mercury will be at 17 degrees of Aries, and the sun will be at 29 degrees of Aries, getting ready to enter the sign of Taurus, getting ready to ingress into the sign of Taurus. And Mercury will be lined up with Venus. So this is also really nice. This could be a nice, sweet communication. Maybe you're the one who's giving that communication or on the receiving end of that communication. But I will also remind you that this also has the potential to be very hasty communication. So if it's not heartfelt, if it's not true, if it's not nice, maybe just rethink it. But around the 18th, you're probably going to be feeling that much more expressive and wanting to feel that much more connected or connected to what's really in your heart, what's really going on. Again, a lot of energy and a lot of emotion. And this can be a really good thing. And then on April 23rd, we're going to have our full moon in Scorpio. And I'm going to do a whole separate reading on that really soon. And that full moon is in a square to Pluto. Ooh, that's very powerful and intense. The heat is on. Now, here's the thing. Because at this point of the cycle, Mercury is getting ready to station direct on April 25th. So as we're moving closer to a stationing point, when the planet's pivoting, the energy is more pivotal. So again, it's like we're getting a double dose of the energy when we're around the station. We've also got that full moon in Scorpio squaring Pluto. No, it's not an eclipse, but everything's coming up from the underworld. Look at what's going on in the media right now. What's being revealed, especially since this lunar eclipse. What we're hearing about. What's real and what's true? What's fact? What's fiction? What's truth? What's embellished? We don't know. Or maybe we do. But there's more to the story and it's coming out. Pluto is the underworld. It's a Scorpio full moon. Pluto rules Scorpio. So I expect a lot more to be coming out in the media as we move throughout the month of April. A lot. Protect yourself. Protect your energy. There's a lot of craziness going on out there. A lot. Again, I'll get into more of this when I do the Scorpio full moon reading. There's too much for me to do it all in this one video. But just know that the energy around this time, 20th, 21st, 22nd, 23rd, then Mercury's getting ready to station, so it's really ramped up. Now, another thing that's really significant is that on April 24th, the day before Mercury stations direct, Mercury will be at 15 degrees and it will be exactly aligned, conjunct the North Node in Aries and opposite the South Node in Libra. This is significant. This is very fated energy, okay? So you really want to be paying attention to right now who and what is coming in and out of your life, because we're dealing with the Mercury conjunct the North Node as Mercury is about to station direct. Very strong emphasis on the future here. It's about your individuality. It's about your relationships. It's about how you function in your relationships with others, and most significantly, your relationship to self. How are you taking care of yourself? How are you handling conflict and confrontation? How are you cowering? How are you giving away your power? How are you owning and standing firm in your power? A lot of really juicy energy is going to be very present around the second half of April. And personally speaking, it's helping to set you back on track. Some tracks will be totally broken and some will be repaired. But you have to recognize the karmic patterns. That's what this is all about. So again, star these dates, or these periods, I should say. And then Mercury will station direct on April 25th at 8:54 a.m. Eastern time to be exact. And Mercury will station direct at 15 degrees and 58 minutes of Aries. Okay, and remember there's something called the shadow period. So Mercury stations direct at 15 degrees and 58 minutes. When Mercury entered shadow, before the retrograde began officially, that means that Mercury got to 15 degrees and 58 minutes. So when Mercury enters the point where it will then station direct, that's referred to as the pre-retrograde shadow, okay? And then when Mercury gets to 27 degrees of 13 minutes of Aries, that's when it clears the shadow. That's the post-retrograde shadow. That's the degree where Mercury actually stationed retrograde, okay? I hope that makes sense. I know it's a lot to follow. Translation, Mercury shenanigans will not fully be beyond us until around May 13th, when Mercury exits the shadow zone. Now let's get to the signs. I'm going to tell you that I always suggest that you follow these readings according to your rising sign. Now, before I get to the readings, I just want to give this disclaimer. Don't make these things fit if they don't. Don't make them happen. Don't make anything that you perceive as negative. Don't make that happen. Don't manifest it. Don't vibe on it. Don't worry about it. Take what I say with a grain of salt. Just want to give you that disclaimer before we go into the readings, because it's not going to land the same for everyone, for every Aries, for every Taurus, for every Scorpio, etc. You get the gist. This is just what I'm feeling. This is the energy. And again, it may or may not resonate for you. So take what resonates and throw away what doesn't. And definitely let me know how you resonate with it if you do. Okay, so if you are an Aries, please know, obviously, this Mercury retrograde is moving through your sign. It's moving backwards through your sign, so you yourself might be feeling a little backwards. You may be feeling more sluggish than normal. You might be feeling like your energy levels are all over the place. And Aries is very energetic, right? They move, they get things done. But you may find yourself a little bit lazier than normal during this retrograde cycle, at least when it comes to moving things along or picking up where you left off. You might just kind of feel like, I really need a break. And I'm going to be honest with you, take that break. You don't want to push yourself past exhaustion during this retrograde cycle, because you will physically feel the implications of that. You will likely come down with a cold. You'll feel that. Your mental health will suffer, your physical health will suffer. So it's really good to tend to your spiritual health under this retrograde. For everybody, but even stronger if you're Aries, okay? Because again, you're going to feel that fiery that heat throughout your body, and you may not always know what to do with it, and you may not always be able to utilize the outlets you would normally utilize, or that would be appropriate under the circumstances, the way you normally would. So you just want to watch out for that. And also pay very close attention to your communication in all of your relationships, because I really do feel that this particular retrograde cycle is going to be bringing up a lot of ghosts from the past for you, Aries, where people from the past might be coming back around to see, in some cases, if you still are going to fall into the same patterns, or if you're going to really harness the energy of what you've learned to move forward or to close a door for good. A lot of relationship dynamics are at the forefront for you throughout this retrograde. So really pay attention to the frustrations, especially because they're really trying to show you something about yourself. You'll come out stronger for it. For Taurus, this retrograde cycle is going to be really significant to take care of your physical body, your physical vessel, get out into nature, recharge through the energy of the sun. I feel like the Taurus folks have really been through a lot the last 6 to 8 months, a lot of endings, a lot of beginnings, a lot of having to revise things that you were working on or plans that you had that just don't seem like they're going to land the way you thought they were. And now it's time to really take a step back and move inward, go inward and reflect upon your next moves, your next steps, your next projects, whatever it is. But this particular retrograde cycle is calling for a point of retreat for you. And while Mercury's retrograde, the sun is going to enter your sign. So you will get a little bit of extra juice from that. But just note that you might be feeling more soppy or sappy, more soppy, more sappy, maybe a little bit more melancholy, or you might be feeling lonely. It's also right before your birthday. And I always say that the month before our birthday or our season tends to be like where there's the darkness before the dawn. Now, that's not all the time, but that just says you do really start to reflect back on everything that you've done up to this point or what you feel you haven't done. And in some cases, you can get really down on yourself. So it's really important for you to remember how much you've grown, how much you've changed, and how much you've shifted. The last 5 to 6 years, especially as Uranus has been in Taurus. I know that this has not been an easy time, but again, like I said to Aries, do not push your physical body, take really good care of yourself, and allow yourself that spiritual rest and retreat that your mind, body, and soul deserves. Gemini, this retrograde could bring in a lot of dynamics that revolve around group activities, that revolve around your friendships or any type of networking that you're doing, networking projects, especially if you're in sales. There might just be contracts that need to be revised. I don't advise signing brand new contracts and contacts under this retrograde cycle if you can avoid it. If you do it, fine-tooth comb and make sure that you're doing everything from your heart and for the right reasons. Don't just say yes to say yes. Gemini tends to take on a lot of projects. They take on a lot at once because that's just how their energy is. But this retrograde, especially because Mercury is your ruling planet, this retrograde is demanding that you don't do that or you will regret it. So really think things through. Don't just say yes without thinking through all of the repercussions or all of what's expected of you or all of what you can actually give. Be very honest about that and tend to your nervous system. Meditation is your friend. You might feel really wired and ramped up under this retrograde. And I do feel like there might be some sleep situations that you're contending with. So do what you can do to turn off earlier, turn off the devices, quiet your mind as best as you can, and get some extra rest. Cancer, this retrograde is going to pull a lot of focus onto your career aspirations. Some of you might be really leveling up, are in line for a promotion. Don't get discouraged if it's not happening yet or if it seems to be delayed. It's likely going to move forward for you in June. So just relax, just know that it's happening. Don't lose your cool. You're going to be feeling extra crabby during this retrograde cycle, just like your symbol, the crab. You will probably have people in your family, specifically male energies, masculine energies, like a father or a brother, could be a grandfather. In some cases, it could be a sister, somebody with masculine energy. They will really be poking at you. And it's likely going to be repetitive situations. It's not going to be anything new, but you're going to be that much more reactive under these energies, that much more heated. So try and take the opposite approach, the opposite stance. Sit down and make a list of how you can make this relationship work for you. In some cases, you might have to cut it off. Toxic is toxic, right? I won't tell you what to do, but I will say, if you do feel it's workable, if you genuinely have love for this individual, whether it's a friend or family, then think about what would be worth it, how you can best work this relationship to be in a higher vibration for both parties or for the group, however that works. And especially if it has to do with your work, because you are leveling up. It might not seem like it now, but you totally are. If you're Leo, don't be surprised if some plans go awry under this retrograde cycle. Don't freak out. Always have a plan B. You know it going into it if you're listening to this. Expect the best, but prepare for the worst. Worst case scenario, there's delays, especially when it comes to travel. You might have to knock a day off an itinerary somewhere, or maybe you have to stay somewhere a little longer than anticipated, or leave a little earlier than anticipated. Something might get canceled, but it will be continued at a later date, so don't despair. Just know that it's possible that you will definitely be affected by this retrograde when it comes to travel plans and group dynamics, especially if you're actually leading a group in some capacity, especially if it has to do with something regarding spirituality. If you're a teacher, just know that your students are probably going to be driving you bonkers during this retrograde more than normal for you. Your patience will be wearing thin, but at the same time, I do feel like many of the Leos are going to have some really nice opportunities coming in for expansion. But, and I think I said the same thing for Cancer, but don't despair if it doesn't happen right away. You might hear about it and then there's a delay and it might be like another month or two down the line, but it's the truth. So if it's not happening immediately, it doesn't mean it's going to happen. You're going to be feeling impatient. So especially if you have like Leo Sun, Cancer Rising, or Cancer Sun, Leo Moon, that's really going to be amplified because it's a similar reading. And if you go back, you'll hear that. Virgo. How is your money? I really feel that this retrograde cycle is pulling a lot of focus onto your finances, especially if you are a Virgo who's going through some sort of a separation, whether it's from a business partner, whether it's from a marriage, whether you're dealing with a family situation that has to do with money. There's a lot of reevaluation that's taking place regarding finances. You are being guided not to make any big ulterior moves and motives. If it was already in the works before the retrograde began, then continue through with it. But if it's something new that crops up, I highly suggest if you can wait, if you can hold off, to wait until once the retrograde shadow is cleared. Now, if you can't, that's okay, but just be very mindful and cautious every single step of the way, because I do feel for some of our Virgos, not all of you, some of you might get duped if you aren't careful when it comes to money, especially if this has something to do with an inheritance or a severance. So if you left a job and you're due some money and then they come back and try to renegotiate a contract, be very mindful. Doesn't mean it's going to go bad. It's just warning you to take an extra look at everything, or have your lawyer take an extra look at everything. Legal situations can factor in here. Doesn't have to be negative. Just double check everything. And if you can wait until Mercury clears its shadow, I think that might be best. Libra, this Mercury retrograde, you're going to be feeling like the hamster on the wheel, and that could be very positive. You can have a lot of balls in the air, a lot going on, a lot of really great opportunities resurfacing from the past that you didn't think would happen. Or on the other side of that, you can see a lot of severing of contracts or agreements, whether they're verbal or whether they're written. A lot of relationship dynamics are really prevalent right now if you're Libra. You're being asked to really look at all dynamics and all sides of it, which really isn't difficult for you to do because you are the sign of fairness and diplomacy. But you're being asked to really question your own motives and if you've been being fair and if you feel that you've been treated unfairly, to communicate that. But again, because it's Mercury retrograde through Aries, your opposite sign, you just want to watch the potential to get very heated. Watch the communication. There's definitely a tug of war energy going on right now for you in pretty much every area of your life, but you are coming out on top. You are coming out ahead. You are coming out stronger for recognizing where there may have been some imbalance within power dynamics, within specific relationships, within specific structures in your life. You've been trying to correct them. You've been trying to rebalance the scales. So this Mercury retrograde is going to be all about acknowledging and revising. And then at the end of the retrograde, you'll be making moves and taking time to yourself to take really good care of your physical body. Sagittarius. For many of you, this retrograde might actually not really impact you directly, but it might impact one of your children if you have children, or a child in your life. They could be going through something, some sort of emotional setback or emotional issue with a friend that they come to you and talk about, and then you feel bad about it naturally, especially if it's your own child or child connected to you. It could also be a time period for some of you where you're really going back into your past and you're really thinking about your own childhood dynamics, your siblings, your peers, people that you've lost touch with. You might find yourself longing to reconnect with those that you've lost touch with, that you've lost contact with. So go for it. I encourage that actually. When the intention's positive, when the feeling is, I miss this person, I want to reach out. Then you're following the protocol that people reach back out to during Mercury retrograde. But again, I will issue that caveat for Sagittarius, only if it's positive, only if it's constructive. If it's to say like, like buzz off, then don't do it because you're going to be very reactive. You're a fire sign. It will be affecting you. It will be charging you up for better or worse. It will be activating you. It'll be activating your body. It'll be activating your mind. It'll be activating your mouth. Again, I feel like your sleep could be challenging because you're going to have so much energy. So you're going to need to enlist in your grounding practices to keep you level. But you can do some of your best work under this retrograde, especially creative work, which is pretty much everything. But this is the time to go back and rewrite and revise whatever it is that you're doing, because that's what retrogrades are good for, right? Getting more in touch with your own inner child, loving on him or her, acknowledging everything that you've been through and how far you've come and how wonderful you are, how wonderful your children are, your family, looking for the good. And there could even be new love coming in for some of you, if you're in the market for that, of course, if you're open to that. Could even be somebody from the past. Hey, it's Mercury retrograde. Capricorn, this Mercury retrograde will find you frustrated. Like I said to Aries, you're going to be wanting to move forward, and you might not be able to because of situations out of your control. During this retrograde, some of you might be dealing with a situation with a parent. Could be a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle, or it doesn't have to be a blood relative, but it could be somebody that you care for in some capacity. Maybe you care for their property, but they would definitely be, older than you. And you may find that during this retrograde, maybe they're enlisting you with something, or they're asking you to take care of something for them. Maybe somebody comes to you and says, I want you to be the executor for my estate or of my will, and you're not expecting that. But I do feel a lot of you are dealing with something legal, and that's not bad, okay? So don't panic. But you're signing documents, you're signing contracts, or at least you're supposed to be. But again, we're under a retrograde. So it's not to say you don't sign documents, especially if they've already been in the works, but you just take extra special care and attention to make sure that everything is fully disclosed and fully understood before you sign on the dotted line. Others of you might be actually renovating your home or your work environment or moving altogether. You might find that this is the time you put your house on the market, or you get really serious about it, or you're really thinking about improvements that you want to make. And Capricorn, you're going to find yourself much more emotionally reactive under this retrograde, but not necessarily in a negative way. You're going to be very contemplative and reflective and nostalgic of your past, of your roots, for better or worse. But don't be surprised if you're sitting there saying, what's wrong with me? I'm normally not like this. Why am I so upset? Why am I so sensitive? It's this retrograde cycle. Aquarius, I want you to be very mindful during this retrograde cycle of your words, okay? Remember that your words have the potential to help, but also to hurt. Now, Aquarius like to be very helpful. I know you do. But sometimes your words can get a little harsh. You can. When you want to get your point across. You can be blunt to the point that it really hurts somebody's feelings. And everybody's going to be feeling that much more sensitive under this retrograde. Remember that. So I'm not telling you to filter yourself. I'm just telling you to be more mindful of your communication, of your expression. Many of you are going to be dealing with a situation with a close friend. A close friend is going to be going through something, and you're going to be their counselor. You're going to be guiding them through it. But I want you to be careful when I talk about the communication piece with that sensitive friend who you're going to be guiding, because that's where this could pertain. Could also be a sibling. It doesn't have to be a friend. A sibling, it could be a colleague, somebody who you're closely connected to, like on the regular, it might even be a neighbor. In fact, I'm feeling that some of you might be dealing with an issue with your neighborhood, or maybe if you live in an area where you have an HOA, or if you're in a co-op, it's got to do with the board. But you know what I mean. Some of you might be dealing with that, with a revision in a contract or a frustration with a neighbor, and you have to communicate, you have to express, you have to explain what's been going on. Again, watch the communication because it can turn left really quickly. It doesn't mean you're wrong. It just means people are more sensitive, so just watch out for that. If you are working on any type of writing project, excellent retrograde to go inward because your creative juices and your intuitive mind are going to be that much more activated, okay? Pay attention to your dream space. And Pisces, I said this to Virgo and I'm going to say it to you as well. Pay attention to your finances. Have you been spending frivolously? If so, this retrograde might smack you on the hands and remind you why you need to reel it in or where you need to reel it in. You might just be rethinking power purchases or really pulling in your finances tighter to you, really going over them, working with them differently. You could also be very reflective on your values, on what you truly value, on who you truly value, on what's truly important to you in this world, in this lifetime. Pisces, you're always very spiritually connected, but this retrograde is going to have you feeling even more so. But it's like you're looking at your material items from a more spiritual perspective, and you're looking at your spiritual self from a more practical perspective. So I actually think that this is going to be a very constructive retrograde cycle for you. I also feel that for some of you, you're dealing with an issue with an animal, a pet, where it's like they had an issue and then they seem to be okay, and now that issue resurfaces. But I will say I do feel they will still be okay. So don't panic. And there you have it for Mercury retrograde, April 1st through April 25th, technically March 18th through May 13th. Take really good care of yourself. We have a lot going on. Remember the lesson of Aries, the warrior, the first sign of the zodiac. Be honest, be true, take care of yourself, take care of others. Reflect upon and recognize what is truly important right now, and then act accordingly. Take really good care and see you soon.